Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a real-time monitoring platform that unifies metrics, logs, and distributed request traces from your cloud containers and orchestration software. Track the health and performance of your dynamic containers, apps, and services with rich visualizations and machine learning-driven events. Datadog's Cluster Agent streamlines data collection from large container clusters and allows you to autoscale Kubernetes workloads based on any metric you're already collecting with Datadog. To start monitoring your container clusters, sign up for a free trial today, and Datadog will send you a free t-shirt. Visit datadog.com/cloudcast to get started. That's datadog.com/cloudcast.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody is doing well. It is kind of early to mid-February 2021. We continue to roll through the year. Before we get to Cloud News of the Week, we're going to hit a couple of housekeeping items real quick, just around the show and in the audience and the community. Hopefully you had a chance to listen and download to the Sunday Perspective show. So we're going to start putting out a show on Sundays. Obviously, the one on Wednesdays, the one that you're listening to right now, will always sort of be the main show. It'll be the one that has both Cloud News of the Week as well as our interview and our guest. Sunday, we're going to put out kind of a little bit shorter show, 15 to 20 minutes, a little bit perspectives on the industry. And obviously, this allows us to dive a little bit deep into some aspect of the industry that's, worth kind of having in your back pocket, knowing about. Sometimes it's historical, sometimes it's perspective on how we got where we are. Sometimes it'll be looking forward, but we'll be putting those out every Sunday morning. So there'll be both a Sunday show and a Wednesday show. A lot of folks have given us feedback that, again, so many things go on in this industry, so many topics that we talk about. Sometimes they're always looking for a little more connected tissue or some ways to, figure out how things all plug in together. So we're going to use the Sunday show to provide a little more perspective on that, and that'll be out every Sunday morning. Second is, hopefully you've had a chance to maybe listen to Cloudcast Basics, tell a friend about it, tell a colleague. We're seeing a lot of uptake on it. We really appreciate everybody who's done that. But yeah, if you get a chance, tell your friends. It is a separate feed from the Cloudcast. Keeps them separate. But yeah, we're seeing some nice uptick there, and it's a great show if people want to get the basics of the cloud. They want to just listen to it, 15, 20 minutes per show. They're all done serially, so they build on top of each other. Season 1 is out, Season 0 is out. So if you get a chance, tell a friend. We'd love to, again, help build the cloud community and build up some new people to come and join us every week. So with that, we're going to get to Cloud News of the Week. And the two things that we were going to hit on this week, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about sort of the first round of earnings announcements that came out. So Azure had an announcement, IBM had an announcement, a few others had some announcements. And this week, AWS, Google, and Ali Cloud all had their announcements. So I'm going to put those things in the show notes. I know there's been some coverage throughout the news about it. AWS was up 29% year over year. Google announced their earnings. Their numbers were up, but they also, for the first time, broke out their operational numbers. I know people had different perspectives on that. Their revenue numbers were up, but their operational numbers were also up high, and they took a loss for the quarter. I think the perspective on that is, you got to look at, as I mentioned in the Andy Jassy recap show from Sunday, it took AWS a good about 8-9 years to really become profitable. Obviously, Google has a huge installed data center base, cloud base they can build on. But it does take a long time to get these things profitable. So Google's obviously, coming from third place perspective, really doubling down on sales and marketing and hiring and so forth and some partnerships. So, I expect we will see losses in that space, but we are seeing their revenues grow as well. So interesting to see that. Ali Cloud announced their earnings, about $2.5 billion for the quarter. I think that puts them pretty solid number 4 in the cloud space. So, we continue to see that grow as well. The other couple of things I wanted to talk about, I want to point these out because for anybody who follows the show quite a bit or follows the industry, it's always good to follow the money. Right. So a couple of interesting reports that were out this week. Charles Fitzgerald, who does an outstanding job covering the cloud and covers CapEx, in particular, a lot of other things on a website called Platformnomics. He always does an annual or biannual look at the CapEx spend of all the clouds. So his report is out. That's out in Cloud News of the Week. Definitely take a look at it. It's always good to put in perspective how much is being spent behind the scenes to run these cloud environments, but also just the overall CapEx spend of those big 3 companies. And then finally, the 2021 State of FinOps report is out. So for all those of you trying to make sense of how much it costs to be in the cloud, how to manage costs in the cloud, the new tooling that's around this, interesting report that came out from the FinOps Foundation. So for 2021. So take a look at those. Those are in the show notes under Cloud News of the Week. And with that, we're going to wrap up Cloud News of the Week. We're going to get to our discussion, have a very, very interesting conversation with the folks from NVIDIA to talk about all the really interesting things they're doing to really redefine what infrastructure looks like, both in the data center, but also in the cloud. We'll get to that right after the break. Today's show is sponsored by Onyx, the award-winning cloud solutions provider. As a premier Google Cloud partner and an advanced consulting partner for AWS, Onyx is the partner you need to take advantage of all the cloud has to offer. Always on, Onyx provides consulting services for cloud infrastructure, collaboration, devices, enterprise search, and geospatial technology. They build long-standing, authentic relationships with their clients. Onyx's cloud data experts are your trusted advisors for discovery and planning to data migration, storage, and visualization. Their team provides experienced machine learning consulting and ensures you are maximizing your data's value. See why 97% of their clients say they're satisfied with the work Onyx has done for them. For a limited time, Onyx is offering your organization a free 6-hour cloud data strategy workshop, normally valued at over $2,000. For more information on this special offer, visit onyxnet.com/thecloudcast. That's ONIXNET.com, onyxnet.com/thecloudcast. Today's show is sponsored by Cloud Zero. For software-driven companies focused on growing margins, Cloud Zero is the only cloud cost intelligence platform that puts engineering in control by connecting technical decisions to business results. By analyzing cloud services like AWS and Snowflake, Cloud Zero provides real-time cost insights that help you maximize margins. Engineering teams can answer critical questions like, who are my most expensive customers? How much does this specific feature cost our business? What's the cost impact of re-architecting this application? With cost anomaly alerts via Slack, product-specific data views, and granular engineering context that makes it easy to investigate any cost, Cloud Zero is your complete cloud cost intelligence platform, connecting the dots between high-level trends and individual line items. Join companies like Drift, Rapid7, and SeatGeek by visiting cloudzero.com/cloudcast to get started today. That's cloudzero.com/cloudcast. And we're back. And folks, one of the things that, we love kind of digging into and going back and forth on is both hardware and software. And Aaron, you and I have sort of had our share of experience in both those things. So this should be a very interesting topic, not to mention today is your birthday. So happy 39th birthday again.
That's right.
Congratulations on another year on the sun.
I sure have a lot of gray in my beard for 39, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So today we're gonna dive a little bit into kind of where the data center is going, where infrastructure is going, kind of the center of the universe of kind of how things are evolved. And we're very excited today to dive into not only a company we haven't talked about, we talk about all the time, but haven't interviewed, but also a topic we really want to dive into. So really excited to have Kevin Deierling, who is Senior Vice President of Marketing at NVIDIA. Kevin, welcome to the show. We're excited to talk to you.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, as I mentioned, we talk about NVIDIA all the time on the show. We're always a mix of hardware and software. Before we dive into any of that, you have a pretty interesting background. You have a lot of sort of diverse interests. So give the listeners a little bit of your background, the things that you're passionate about, and kind of ultimately what brought you to, NVIDIA and sort of, now the center of kind of the data center and cloud universe in terms of infrastructure and I/O and stuff.
Yeah, so I came into NVIDIA last year through the Mellanox acquisition. So I run the networking products part of our NVIDIA team. And really, I do have a broad background. I've done a lot of software and a lot of different types of startups and communications, et cetera. And that's what I love about being at NVIDIA, because the company has really transformed itself from a gaming company to a data center company and an accelerated computing company across just a ton of different applications. So it really gives us a great opportunity to accelerate all of those different applications, whether robots, self-driving cars, drug discovery, all of that is AI, and every business is becoming AI.
And Kevin, I'm glad you brought that up, because Historically, I've thought the exact same thing you just said there of NVIDIA, is kind of the 3D company or the GPU company, right? And so before we dig into kind of your area of focus, let's kind of step back, and especially with the Mellanox background as well, give us an idea of like the big picture view of where we are kind of as an industry, but also with NVIDIA's view of that in, 2021 with cloud and data center.
Yeah, I think it turned out that gaming GPU was the perfect place to start to address the massive parallelism that's required to perform AI. And once that happened, we've just seen the complexity of the models and the types of problems that we're able to solve explode. And so at the same time that we see Moore's law slowing down, we see the scope and the scale of AI problems scaling up at a superlinear rate. So the net of all of this is that we really can't think about the computer anymore as this single box with constrained by, sheet metal, but rather the data center becomes the new unit of computing. And when that happens, suddenly it's not just the CPU, but also the GPU and now the DPU that the networking piece brings to the equation. So those are the trinity, if you will, of this new data center as the new unit of computing.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, and I'll say it. You don't have to say it. I feel like we're a little bit in a kind of a post-Intel world because, like you said, we're no longer thinking about kind of individual boxes. We're having to think about things at a much grander scale. You mentioned GPUs, you mentioned CPUs, and then you talked about this sort of other concept called a DPU, which is right in your domain. So give us some basics. Not only what is a DPU, but what are the things that it's able to solve in the data center now that we're thinking about the data center as sort of our complete place where we're doing computing and analysis and all the other ways we have to manage data.
Yeah, so with the GPU doing this massive parallel processing for AI, you need to be able to actually get the data to and from both the GPU and the CPU. And for that, the data processing unit, or the DPU, is what's been developed. And what we see here is that you can offload the software-defined networking, storage, and security so that instead of running that on the x86, we actually run that on the DPU. And when you do that, we get a huge performance benefit. About 30% of the CPU cores can be returned to run applications. And so that's just the enormous benefit of the DPU.
Yeah. And I mean, we think about that just as a follow-up, right? Like we're already hearing about ARM chips being, 40% cheaper, 40% faster, DPUs being able to offload. That, I mean, the story that you're able to tell now is pretty amazing, right? We're not talking about 5%, 10%, like you're talking 30, 40, 50%. Like that completely changes the economics. Like how do you think about that world where that economics is just so much different than it was even a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. This is really an economically driven product, the DPU. And we use ARM cores in the SoC that forms that DPU. So the data processing unit includes a bunch of ARM processors. In this case, we've got the A72 ARM, which is a great high-performance ARM processor. But we also have dual 100 gigabit per second network connections and a whole bunch of accelerators. And so we like to talk about offload, accelerate, and isolate. And the offloading is easy. We're just shifting the processing from the CPU to the DPU. But the acceleration is really key there to recognize the cost savings. Because if we simply shifted the processing that was happening on the x86 to the ARM processor, that naive approach would fail. So we actually accelerate things like NVMe over fabrics or security and encryption, V-routing and virtual switching and container support. All of those is accelerated in hardware. So it's software defined and hardware accelerated. And that's really where we get the cost savings that we're saving hundreds of equivalent x86 CPU cores.
And so you had an interesting phrase there of software and hardware kind of combining all together. And so as we start to see these DPUs come into use, so let's approach it from a not just economic but design and architecture standpoint. What are some of the key things architects out there need to start think about with all of this, and like who is thinking about them, right? Like you've always kind of had this standard, oh, I'm the network architect. Is it still a networking person? Is it more like an infrastructure person? And more and more we're combining like AI into this as well. And so tell us a little bit more about not just who needs to be thinking about it, but like what do those teams and staffs look like as well?
Yeah, I think that's right. What I talked about was the software defined and hardware accelerated architecture that we have with the DPU. What that really means is that we can't afford anymore to have the traditional IT guys that sort of managing security policy groups and things like that. In this new containerized world that we're talking about of really sec DevOps, where it's security and DevOps combined, containers are coming and going all the time. And so we need a huge amount of automation. And really, it's the integration with all of these different AI platforms that I talked about. So whether it's a retail business or a pharmaceutical business or a robotics business or manufacturing or 5G telco, it's really the combination of business expertise in each of those areas applying AI. So the people that need to be involved are really crossing those traditional boundaries. People shouldn't be thinking of their data center as a cost anymore. It should really be a profit center. And companies that are realizing that and deploying AI onto this new infrastructure, it requires multidiscipline capabilities across the company.
Yeah, we're seeing that more and more. I mean, every third or fourth show that we do, it's, AI ops, ML ops, SaaS ops, and you're right, it becomes multidiscipline. One of the, as we were kind of reading up on this and trying to learn more about it, another term that we hear mentioned a lot with DPUs is this idea of a SmartNIC, which, as I first started reading about it, seemed a little odd because, having grown up with Ethernet NICs, you're like, yeah, that's a board, it's an embedded thing on the motherboard and so forth. But give us a sense of like what these SmartNICs are doing, and maybe more importantly, like where are people going to go find these out in the marketplace? Are they commonly used? Are they in the clouds today? Are they in Dell and HP and other types of things? Like give us a sense of this concept of SmartNIC and really kind of how it's evolved.
Yeah, the SmartNIC that has this DPU on it is really an important thing because it puts a computer in front of the computer. So I talked about the offloading from the x86 to the DPU and the acceleration, and it also does isolation. So it's offload, accelerate, and isolate. That isolation is really important from the SmartNIC because it's put a computer in front of the computer. And that means that you can preserve all of these policies. So whether it's data access policies or security policies on what you can get from the internet or put out on the internet, you can protect for personally identifiable information. There's all kinds of protections that you can layer and yet still present to your customer. And in this case, your customer can be an internal customer, a bare metal server. That's what everybody really wants is, hey, I have complete ownership and control of the server. And at the same time, you're guaranteeing that you can have all of the policies that you need to protect the company and the users intact. So that combination is really what the DPU-based SmartNIC brings to this new modern data center.
And Kevin, a follow-up to that is, can common applications take advantage of them, or do they need to be written for DPU offload or to be DPU aware? Like, tell us a little bit more, like how far up the stack does that integration truly go?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we announced with our Bluefield was the software stack that sits on top of that, and that's called DOCA. It's a data center on a chip architecture. What that does is abstract a whole bunch of the accelerators for software-defined networking, storage, and security, and presents common APIs. So what that means is that if you're familiar with writing to a particular, whether it's an OVS model, for example, in the Linux world, or you're familiar with the VMware world, you'll write to the exact same interfaces. And then they will be sitting on top of this layer that we will accelerate it under the hood. So the beauty of this is we're not asking anyone to change all of their architecture. They'll be able to use the familiar management frameworks that they're used to. They'll develop on top of APIs that they're used to. And then as we develop our roadmap underneath, and we'll continue to accelerate these DPUs, that common framework of the software, this Docker layer, will be common across that hardware boundary. So it protects our application developers' investments so that they don't have to rewrite it every time we accelerate it. And we're looking at 1,000-fold acceleration over the next several years. So it's really important that we preserve our development partners' investments in their applications.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense because, I was just going to say, like, that's, if you get friction in something, right, that's where you're going to get the friction, right, is rewriting that app to take advantage of new APIs, even if it is something really powerful and you're getting a lot out of it. Sometimes just that friction of who's going to rewrite the app becomes the where all the problems are coming from, right? So it makes sense.
So I think what's good there is we have some history with AI and our GPUs with CUDA. So CUDA was the framework and is the framework that for more than a decade has supported application developers. So you can go back to a 10-year-old GPU and you wrote your application on top of CUDA, and it'll still run on our latest, greatest Ampere GPUs. It'll run a lot faster, of course, now, because we've got massive amounts of acceleration of the hardware. And so really this Docker layer is for DPUs what CUDA is for GPUs. So we're excited that we've got something that will protect the investment that our partners are making.
Very, very cool. We'll get all that stuff in the show notes for folks. So if they're listening, they want to follow up, we'll have links in there. I want to ask you one last question. You talked a little bit in the opening about kind of these new things that are happening, whether it's autonomous driving or improvements for 5G telco. Like, what are some of the things you see over the next couple of years that are really going to ramp up because this new capability is available, right? Like I can accelerate things. I can, what are some of the, kind of early conversations you're having with people that they go, oh, okay, this new door has been unlocked and the floodgates are going to kind of, going to open and things happen. What are some of those things that people might, kind of expect to see or, you kind of pique their interest as to what's possible with this?
Yeah, I think every business is going to become an AI business. And that's simply because the ones that don't won't be around. And one of the key technologies that is amazing is really this notion of a digital twin. And so whatever the product is that you can imagine that you're trying to build or you're trying to fit into, imagine duplicating that in the digital world. And we see this, we showed it most recently with an automobile application where Volvo was actually showing a car that they were building, and every single piece of that car was in their database, and we could see that car visually and change things. What if we want to move the steering wheel from the left side to the right side? What happens? And that type of digital twin, and I think even in the space of pharmaceuticals, we're actually modeling human beings. If you look at what's happened most recently with the pharmaceuticals and vaccine developments, we can accelerate that if we can actually have a model for the human immune system, that we can start to test things out and evolve that model over time. So I think it's across the board. Any business today can benefit from AI, and I think everything will.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I know we've got some friends who run a company called Swim.ai who is in this space. They introduced digital twins to us probably 18 months ago. For those of you listening, James Urquhart, who was on a few weeks ago, was talking about digital twins in the sort of flow space and event-driven application space. So yeah, this is definitely a buzzword and a concept to keep on your radar and so forth. Kevin, we can't thank you enough for kind of introducing us to what's going on both at NVIDIA, but with DPUs and some of the new things that you're able to do with accelerants. Thank you so much for the time today. If people want to reach out and kind of pick your brain on some of these topics, what's a good way to get engaged with you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is just go to the NVIDIA website, or you can tweet me. I'm TechSeer KD, and I'll respond.
Yeah, very, very cool. Aaron, we learned a lot today. You want to take us home?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as always, thank you everyone for listening. And if you have a moment, we would love a review on either the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store as well. We've been out there for quite some time now, but trying to build up the reviews a little bit. So if you have a moment, we'd love to see that. And as always, thank you for listening this week, and we hope you'll join us next week as well. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.